So this report is engaging something called the Committee Against Torture. So I'm going to walk us through sort of what this all means. So the Committee Against Torture is sort of the governing body of the Convention Against Torture, which is an international human rights treaty that outlines the specific things that governments need to be doing to make sure that they're preventing and addressing torture that's taking place in its borders. So this started in 1984. The U.S. signed on to it in 1994. And since then, every 4 years, the United States is supposed to submit an update saying, here's how we're doing with making sure we're following these rules. And then they actually are supposed to go to Geneva, and there's a hearing that takes place where the UN asks questions, and asks clarifying questions, and also pushes back against if they're aware that there's actually abuses taking place in that country. And so at this time, there's going to be 10 committee members who will be there. One person's from the United States who will be silent throughout all of this. But back in 2013, the United States submitted its third report. The U.S. has not been very timely. This is only their third time doing this, and it's supposed to represent their third, fourth, and fifth paper all in one. It's like 100 and something pages. And then in response, and sort of in addition to that paper, groups like ours, NGOs, grassroots groups, folks, what's called civil society, are invited to submit something called a shadow report that follows in the shadow of the U.S.'s report. It's supposed to offer more information than maybe what the U.S. has been providing, to push back against maybe things that are in there. Also to add new information if there's a problem that the UN hasn't asked them about yet. It's a chance to be like, hey, this is also going on and you need to know about it and ask questions around it. So that's what we have done, is we've submitted this shadow report that documents, that speaks to issues that the UN has raised before around police violence, but adds a whole lot of new information around what's specifically happening here in Chicago and what young people of color in particular are experiencing. So in the past, in the latest report that the UN that asked the US to talk through, in the UN's report, they were really concerned about things like Guantanamo Bay, immigration detention, specifically healthcare. You had a lot around police issues, certainly. Specifically, police issues with what happened after Katrina, trying to get updates around that. You had a lot of concerns around tasers, a lot of concerns around there being a lack of federal oversight of police departments. And then also, though, really amazingly, the CPD specifically is called out. Other than New Orleans, as far as I remember, that is the only police department that's named specifically in the UN sort of questions to the US that they're expected to address. And this is because of the incredible organizing that was taking place around the John Bridge torture cases, and folks like Joey Mogul, who's somewhere, going to the United Nations and doing what we're about to do now around John Bridge. So there's room for us to really add on to that conversation, which is very exciting. So there are 8 of us that are going to be going to the United Nations, presenting our report and trying to bring more attention from the committee to what we've raised. And so this is the original 6 of us. When we first set out, we just wanted to raise enough money to send as many as possible of these 6 people. And so we have Ethan Viets Van Leer, who I can't tell you how amazing that is. He is the person who I quoted at the very beginning who was friends with Damo, and he's getting to go, which is remarkable. I'll be going, Rick Wilson, Monica Trinidad, which is over here, Todd St. Hill, and Brianna Champion. We ended up having such an incredible response from the community. We've raised, just online, we've raised over $20,000 from over 370. And that's from folks all over the country. I think some people were international. There's like one really amazing one from a 5-year-old who saved up her allowance and made a donation to us. Like really, really amazing resonance in the wider community. And we actually were able then to add 2 other incredible young people of color to our delegation. So we've got Asha Ransby and Malcolm London are also going to be going with us. So it'll be a total of 8, which is just really, really amazing. They're definitely going to notice us. Like that's definitely So I want to break down another piece. So we're going right to the Committee Against Torture. So there's an important distinction to note. We're saying what's happening here is torture and cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. A lot of times, sometimes those things get conflated. I even make that mistake. So here's the thing. Cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, the way I understand it, And it's a hard, there's not like a very specific line, it's definitely, there's some gray areas, but cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment causes severe physical or mental pain and is caused by public officials, right? The police causing severe physical and mental pain is cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. Torture is sort of the most severe cases of that, and it's not just being caused by a public official, but it's intentionally being inflicted, right? It's being done unlawfully, right, for prescribed purposes. So they're racist, right? That would be bad, and that's absolutely unlawful, right? So that's how we understand sort of the differences there, and we see both of those things happening, right? That there's absolutely torture taking place, and then an overwhelming amount of just cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. Now, there's 17 or 16 articles in the convention, and we really highlighted 6 of them. So I'm not going to read through all of these. You can see them. They're really easy to find online. But I do want to just really quickly distill the most important pieces of these articles that we've touched on. So Article 2 basically says you have to prevent torture, right? You have to do that. And cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment. So Article 10 says, okay, so you have to prevent it, and then also you have to have sufficient and adequate education and training systems in place at a federal level, so standards of education and training that adequately prevent torture, right? So you have to have a training system for your cops so that they aren't torturing people. We know that's not happening. Article 11, this one's really important. You have to have, the federal level Department of Justice needs to have systemic review of its police department. So standards for measuring and keeping track of what practices are in place, what data is being collected, how is that data being collected, what are the trends and patterns we see in that data. The federal level is supposed to be doing that, and they're not. Article 12 says that people who make a charge of torture against the government or a police officer are supposed to have the right to a prompt and impartial investigation, right? And then Article 13 says that, and if someone makes that complaint or charge, that there needs to be adequate systems in place to make sure that those folks are protected against any ill treatment or retaliation or intimidation. And then Article 14 says that if it's found that torture is taking place, that those individuals involved are due fair and adequate compensation. And this includes means for as full of rehabilitation as possible, right? So not necessarily just a check, but also, right, we know that when people are tortured, there's a lot of ongoing psychological issues. You need therapy, right? Folks might need job training. There's all different kinds of things that are involved in rehabilitation. So those are some of the articles that I just want to pull out really quickly. If it's not clear already, it's a complicated paper to write. You have to speak through those articles, right? Like make this legal argument, and you're trying to address. So here, UN, here's what you asked the U.S. to say. Here's the problems with how they responded to your questions, and here's new information in addition to what you've been talking about in the past that we're adding in now. And all of this is contained within this Human Rights Convention Against Torture framework. So with all of that, and you only have 15 pages. That was the other really tricky thing. So what we found, though, is that there are these really common, there's these specific themes of cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment and torture that young people are experiencing that I'm going to talk through the data in just a moment. So we've got harassment and abuse, use of excessive force, use of deadly force, sexual assault, mass arrest and detention, and then inaction and impunity. And that within this we find violations of Articles 2, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14.